Hello and welcome back to Downtime Activities. Matt here with another RPG review. Today we're going to be reviewing the Other Earth system from Infinite Odyssey Games. Other Earths is a new system that's going to be going live on Kickstarter soon, or already has when this video is coming out to you guys. And they reached out to us and wanted us to kind of look over their system and give our opinion on it. So here's a review. Other Earths is a tabletop RPG set in a string of parallel universes and is all about the history of, and interaction between, these universes. Elves, orcs, and humans fight with and against one another and seek to attain and control the technology of an ancient time-traveling species. As per our usual reviews, we'll start with character creation and then go over the elements of gameplay themselves. Like most other tabletop RPGs, your character has a list of traits, which are in this case called basics. This is an acronym for the ability scores, sort of like how the Fallout games use the acronym SPECIAL for their line of ability scores. These traits are Brawn, Agility, Stamina, Intellect, Charm, and Sense. Brawn is carry weight, melee damage, and the like. Agility governs your chance to hit as well as your initiative. Stamina determines your pool of hit points. Intellect is knowledge-based checks and lets you make healing checks. Charm is your swath of social skills like persuasion and intimidation. And Sense is sort of like a wisdom stat and lets you make saves against mind effects, roll perception checks, stuff like that. At character creation, you get 20 points to raise these traits. They cannot be less than 1 and cannot go higher than 6. This number is the number of dice you will roll when making a check using that trait, but we'll go over that in the gameplay section later. The other main element of a character is your timeline. Because of the multi-timeline nature of this setting, this is how your lineage or species works. There are 3 core options here: human, elf, and orc. Humans have 3 separate timelines, and elves and orcs each have 2. These each give a small boost to 2 of your basics, as well as giving access to unique abilities that only that timeline has access to. This is where a lot of the character of this system shines through. For example, the Earthling timeline for humans, by the lore, essentially comes to a grinding halt in 1995 when the elves invade from another parallel universe. Making an Earthling character, you could choose to take a timeline ability that lets you re-roll most charm checks, as long as you make a relevant pop culture reference from before 1995 in character. Another timeline gives you a bonus to intimidation checks if you make them in Russian. Some of these timeline abilities are extremely powerful, and they help to set the scene for what your character is expected to be. If you want them at all, however, you must take them during character creation, or they're locked off for the rest of the game. This is a system without character classes or levels. Much like the Edges system from Savage Worlds, Other Earths has an extensive list of abilities and spells that you choose from at character creation and as you earn XP. These vary wildly, both in power level and in effect, and many of them have other abilities as a prerequisite requirement. Some give you the ability to deactivate machines or hotwire a vehicle, while others might give powerful social abilities, add to the number of dice you roll in certain situations, or let you re-roll entirely. We're not going to get into spellcasting in any real detail here, but there are essentially 3 forms of spellcasting: witchcraft, Tau magic, and blood magic. To some degrees, each governs a different type of spellcasting, but how they truly differ is in the nature of their casting. Witchcraft is all about dealing with demons, Tau magic is more about focus and training, and blood magic is mostly about ripping apart souls. The magic system is one of the most interesting parts of the system, not because of these spellcasting methods themselves, but because of what the system calls combination casting, which requires multiple casters to work together to create unique effects or more powerful spells overall. A coordinated playgroup could get a lot of mileage out of these effects, and even the basic spells we used were often quite effective. As per usual, you have a few other scores as well. Your Brawn modifier, which is part of how melee damage is calculated, is half of your Brawn score rounded up, and your Wounds, which is your pool of hit points, is twice your Stamina score. Armor rating isn't affected by core stats and doesn't affect how hard it is to hit you, but establishes a sort of damage threshold that each individual die needs to pass in order to count as a wound. Like most systems, you get a budget to buy your starting equipment, and this introduces a lot of the customization that this system has. The equipment list is vast, and has items tailored to each of the forms of spellcasting, the various timelines, and almost every playstyle, from sword and sorcery to power armor and heavy weapons. Almost every piece of gear has a statistical effect, including a long list of food and drink items that confer a bonus of some type, from removing status effects to giving bonuses on certain rolls for a number of rounds. As far as the core mechanics of gameplay are concerned, Other Earths uses a dice pool system. This dice pool is made up of d6s and is usually your relevant basic score. For example, if you're asked to roll an attack with a rifle, you'll roll a number of d6s equal to your agility score. You're looking for a 5 or 6 for a success, and 3 6s counts as a crit. A crit will give you 2 free successes on the check, in addition to all the successes you rolled. A standard range attack needs 2 successes to land, so if you roll 5 dice for your high agility and get a 3, 2, 1, 5, and 6, that attack will hit because of the 5 and 6. Obviously, the number of successes you need depends entirely upon the difficulty of the check, so a check only requiring a single success is much easier than one that requires 3 or 4. A lot of equipment and abilities add to the number of dice you roll, so it won't be unusual for a specialized character to roll a ludicrous number of d6s on a check that they're especially suited to make. All weapons, both ranged and melee, have a base damage. Melee weapons add your brawn modifier on top of this, but obviously guns don't because that would be ridiculous. Whatever the damage is, you roll that many d6s. Every d6 that is over the enemy's armor rating does 1 wound. Some weapon or equipment add a plus to the attack, and this adds dice to the plus to your attack roll, while some weapons and equipment add a plus to damage, and this adds a number of dice equal to that plus to the damage roll itself. There is a big variety of weapons with a multitude of additional effects, way too many to go over here, but this is the basics of how weapon attacks and damages are determined. This system is very rules dense. I don't mean that in the sense that you'll be constantly doing math to calculate results, but that nearly everything has been codified within this system. We've struggled with systems in the past not clearly stating how to rule perception checks, or how terrain or cover might affect a roll, but this system does not have that issue. This is going to be more for players and playgroups who like having that level of hard and fast detail to their rule sets. Other Earths does have a super convenient set of pages where they lay out every key term in alphabetical order, which is a fantastic idea. You don't need to constantly flip back and forth to see what the burn effect does or the effects of the fatigued condition, because they're all in the same set of pages listed out in convenient fashion. The last, but certainly not least, piece of this system is the world itself. There is a lot of lore in this book. Details from thorough breakdowns of each race and timeline to in-depth histories written in character from the perspective of an Imperial Elven historian. The creators of this system have created a very detailed setting, and much of it is available here to read and use. To go over it in any substantial detail here would take far too long, but for groups out there that love a well-fleshed-out world, they will find no shortage of information in this system. This system is very well suited for groups who are looking for an interesting and unique setting with lots of history and lore. Groups that like systems that are more on the rules dense side and have statistical breakdowns of how almost any interaction should be determined will feel right at home in Other Earths. This is, however, my opinion, and as a GM, you know, I can't be trusted. But here's some opinions from people that maybe you can trust, the players.
I think the Other Earth system has a lot of personality to it, and it really shines through just kind of across the board, both in the character options as well as like the spellcasting and some of the interactions there, and the equipment list really has just a lot of variety to it and a lot of that kind of personality. There's a lot of lore baked into all of it. And I really like that the equipment pretty much across the board has statistical effects. Even consumables like food and drink actually affects, takes away status conditions or gives like short-term bonuses and stuff like that. And that's something that a lot of systems like tabletop systems just don't do, and I really think it's a cool idea, and it incentivizes characters to actually kind of like buy and carry some of that stuff. And it's obvious that they put a lot of effort into the lore and the world building. That really shines through, everywhere. Even half of the weapons in the equipment list have lore to them. And as a writer myself, I can appreciate the amount of effort and detail that was put into it.
So what I liked about the game is that it's got a lot of lore, but I thought the lore like that they came up with is actually really interesting. It's about different time periods and like crossing between the times and different planes, and so you got like, and it's whole like different races. So they've made up a whole timeline for different races, as far as like this is their technology at this time and whatnot, and it's not just human time. So yeah, I think that was pretty interesting. It's pretty rules heavy, which isn't my strong suit as far as learning rule systems. But then again, I'm just a player, so who cares?
So Other Earths was a really interesting system to play in. I really enjoyed the casting system and magic system of it. I played as basically a debuff caster that used the witchcraft skill, and that was a lot of fun because I was able to stack debuffs in an area, which made combat really interesting because you could just make the bad guys not good at being bad guys, and it made it very entertaining. And the idea of the magic system being tied to different sources of power was very cool, and how that would affect even like your miscast chance, or not chance, but your miscast negatives. So if you were in witchcraft, you could take an attack from your patron. If you were in Tau, which is like the elemental magic system, you would fight levels of fatigue whenever you miscast. So it was really interesting to have those different consequences depending on the class of mage you were playing. And then the ability to combine would have been really interesting once we got to higher levels. Reading through those rules and systems was very interesting. Like, oh, you can combine summoning an imp with an elemental spell to get an elemental demon, and it was like, that's really cool. It's a really cool idea to like have multiple casters in your party that are working together to do certain things or accomplish tasks. So definitely an interesting system as far as that went, for sure.
That has been our review of the Other Earths RPG setting and system. If you're interested in checking this system out, there will be a link in the description down below. You can go check out the Kickstarter and support it. If you're interested in any other tabletop RPG reviews or gameplay, advice, we have all sorts of videos like that on the Downtime Activities channel. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.